Well, good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, and we are really thrilled to be able to start our session of Ready to Work. This particular session is entitled Achieving Interview Success, and we are thrilled here at the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce to bring that to you all. My name is Regina Ward. I am on the workforce and education team here at the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. We call ourselves Rutherford Works because we are absolutely excited to be able to work with each of you in finding a place that is a wonderful setting for you to not only grow in your career, but also for you to be able to network and increase your educational knowledge and experience. So, just to kind of give you all a little bit of background about our Ready to Work series, our goal right now is to be able to help you all with jobs training and upskilling opportunities. So, we're working with local employers, our American Job Center here locally, WGU, to increase our employment within Rutherford County through training, upskilling, and hiring events. This morning, we have Miss Jessica Prater with us. Jessica owns her own consulting company that has over 11 years of experience in organizational development and training in human resources. Jessica has done lots of trainings for us. She's always such a delight and has tons of experience and helpful hints that have been very helpful for folks that we've had previously. And I know that she will be of great help to you all. We do have the chat box open today, and we'll be monitoring that as we move forward in today's event. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jessica.
All right. Thank you, Regina, and welcome everybody. I was so excited and honored when Beth Duffield asked me to speak today and talk about achieving interviewing success. A lot of people know and see me as the training person, the organizational development person, but what a lot of people don't realize is that I have several years of experience as a human resources generalist. And I also serve several small to mid-sized businesses here in the area as an HR consultant. And so I actually am on the other side. I am helping businesses build and design fantastic interviews. And so, what better way to work with you guys than to tell you guys how to achieve interviewing success? So again, my name's Jessica Prater with J. Prater Consulting. I am a local business. And so this is the unique thing about the world that we're living in right now is that with technology, with access, we have opportunities to work with people all over the United States and access with that. But I'm here, I'm local. I know the local job market. I know Rutherford County, and I'm actually a Bedford County resident. I've been here in the Middle Tennessee area for what's wild to me is 12 years. I'm originally from the Memphis area. And so, this is something that we are experiencing a very challenging time right now in the workforce. The economy is down, depending on what reports that you look at, jobs are either going up or going down depending on the week. But we know that the economy has been significantly disrupted because of COVID-19 and really a lot of the other things that are going on in the environment right now. And so what I want you guys to know is that the interview process cannot be something necessarily that you don't have to be worried about it. You don't have to be, nervous. And what I would tell you as well is that interviewing goes in both directions. And let me tell you guys this. By the way, we have a chat box available. If you have questions as we're going through this, please make sure that you're dropping into that chat box. Regina is watching that chat box for me, and she has been given permission to stop me at any moment if we have a good question. And I've got her pulled up right now. So Regina, I can see you right now. You can flag me down if we have a good question. But I want to make sure we're going to go briefly through a presentation right now and let you guys see it. And then I'm going to open it up to questions. And you guys are more than welcome to ask me, whatever about the interviewing process. But interviewing goes in both directions. What a lot of people don't realize is that early in my career, I started out with Bridgestone Americas, and I spent a lot of time both in the corporate office and the plant environment interviewing people. I interviewed folks all the way from individuals that were working on our plant floor, all the way up to I did interview some executives that got put into positions with the organization, and I got put in the interview room through those situations. And interviewing goes both directions. It is both an interview to see if the company, if you're a good fit for the company, but also if the company is a good fit for you. The story that I like to tell is about midway through my career, I was very happily employed, but I actually had a company that sought me out and recruited me. And I actually went through an interview process at one point just to kind of see if I liked the organization. And got all the way to the final interviews, and I actually got offered the job and told the company, I'm sorry, I'm just not a great fit. This organization is not a great fit for me, because I was asking good questions through the interview process. And I can tell you guys, I continued on with my corporate career. I got a promotion shortly after that. I'm so glad that I turned down that job because I was asking the right questions. And I really understood that that organization wasn't a great fit for me. So I want you guys, first of all, to go into an interview and really thinking about, not only are they interviewing you, but you're interviewing them. Okay. Even in times like now, even in times when jobs seem to be scarce, I want to encourage, empower you to not take a job that doesn't necessarily fit with your career path. Okay. I would encourage you guys to really be mindful about interviewing a company to make sure it's a good fit for you. Because I can tell you, as somebody that's talked to a lot of people through career changes, the worst thing that you could do is go with a company that's not a good fit for you. So let's talk a little bit about day of preparation. I know yesterday you guys talked through preparing before the interview, but some things that I would like you guys to do. If you have an interview, I want you to have some day of preparation. And so, about 30 minutes before the interview, I want you to sit down and where you're going to interview, and I want you to really get set up and get in the right mindset. Most of the interviews that are happening right now are on a virtual basis, okay? And even if you're going into an interview, and here's what I want you guys to know, if you're going into an interview, I want you to take a moment and set up everything in front of you. I can tell you guys, I interviewed a lot of people. The people that did the best were the ones that sat down, took a few moments, spread out a few things in front of them, and made sure they were fully prepared. As an interviewer, I am never going to push you to, okay, let's jump straight into this. I'm going to say something like, are you ready? And take a few moments and make sure you have your thoughts gathered and that kind of thing. Make sure you print out your resume, print out the job description for what you're hiring for. Take some notes on it. That will help you make sure that you're really, highlighting the things that you can bring your best skill set to. Make some notes about company highlights, okay? And here's what I want you guys to know as well. If you are not on LinkedIn, and I'm sure this has already been talked about this week, if you are not on LinkedIn, you need to be on LinkedIn. You need to do your homework before you come to this session, but to this interview. And you can do that on LinkedIn. I will put a shameless plug here. I actually have something within my business. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you can go to linkmynetwork.com. That's my company, linkmynetwork.com. That's going to give you some tips and tools on how to create your LinkedIn profile. But you can do some LinkedIn searching about company highlights. You also want to have something in front of you to write on. I cannot tell you how many people that I interviewed over the years that they just sat down and they had nothing to write on, and they struggled remembering some things through the interview. And you're going to see more why in a couple of minutes, why I recommend for you to have a notepad in front of you and also set up your space. So believe it or not, as a consultant, I still do interviewing for myself. I just had a client that I talked to this week that they wanted me to talk to their executive team to essentially have an interview. And so I want to show you guys how my desk was set up for that virtual interview. By the way, as you guys can probably tell, I am set up as an office in my spare room. You can see the guest bed behind me. And if you can't see here, there's a dog actually sitting in my lap. And this is life right now for us. And he actually sat in my lap the whole time I was doing my interview the other day. But if you want to see how my step is when I do a virtual interview, I have my job description on the left, or on the left, and that is actually the write out of what I was pitching to this company, which again, just think about as you're interviewing, you pitching yourself. On the right, I actually had my resume printed out because they actually asked questions about some of my background, my experience, and I had that all printed out. I also had in the top left-hand corner the acronym STAR, and I'm going to tell you what that means in just a minute. But then I also was looking at LinkedIn right before I had the conversation. I was connecting to some of their executives that would be on the call. I was looking at their background history. So again, that just helped me really get started. I really like doing virtual interviews because you can have a really good setup in front of you and really feel comfortable having all the information right in front of you. So, what are some special considerations for virtual interviews? I know right now we're kind of in a weird time doing virtual interviews, and maybe you've never done a virtual interview. And so, I want to empower you with some tips of how to do this well. First of all, I have to confess to y'all, I didn't do this well this morning. If you were signed on early, you might have seen we were having some technology issues. You know, I've used WebEx before, but no offense to Martha, I've never used the WGU platform to WebEx. I didn't realize that that was going to be a little bit different. And so make sure you're testing your technology ahead of time. If you're interviewing with somebody, your recruiter who you're working with will have what technology that you're using. And you can ask them, you know, hey, what app are you using? What technology are you using? Is it Google Meet? Is it, you know, WebEx? Is it, Zoom? And go ahead and download that ahead of time. Go ahead and test that so that you can make sure when you're getting on that day that you can sign right on. A lot of times, especially in your frontline interviews, you have a very short amount of time to talk with somebody. And if you're spending 10 minutes messing with technology, getting it to be right, that's going to take away from that first impression of you. Okay. And I'll tell you guys as well, YouTube is fabulous. If you're struggling with any of these platforms, you can find, technical explanations of everything on YouTube. Make sure your camera is set right with good lighting. Okay. Make sure that you're near some natural light, near a window. Make sure your lighting looks good. Make sure that your camera is set up in a way that you really don't get distracted by the technology. Okay. Here's a piece that I want you guys to really think about as well. And this is something that we sometimes struggle to remember, that we are on camera. We're not necessarily looking at someone in the eyes. And so when you want to make sure that you emphasize something, when you make sure that, if there's something you really want to drive home, don't look at the screen, look at the camera. Do y'all see a big difference of that? When I'm talking directly to the camera, it's a little bit different of looking down to the screen. When you are really wanting to get across, and again, you're not going to want to do this the whole time because you're going to want to be looking at the screen for someone's nonverbals. But if you really want to get something across, make sure that you're looking directly into the camera. Pause and breathe. This is something that I can't emphasize enough. If someone asks you a question and you really need to take a moment, there is nothing wrong with taking a beat and taking a breath. That is the same whether you're in the room with the interviewer or you're interviewing over the computer. The best interviews that I've ever seen, the people that get the job, the people that stand apart, are the people that pause, take a moment to think about the question that they've been asked, and maybe they take some notes before they start talking. That's the most effective way to interview. So I want to give you guys a hack from an HR side because I help design interviews. And I want you guys to know how most companies are writing their interview questions these days. Interview questions are based off a methodology called the STAR methodology. So anytime that a company, if you have somebody that's asking you, a good cue phrase that you're going to hear before a STAR-based question is, tell me about a time, or have you ever? It's going to be an experience-based question. Most companies are using these STAR-based questions to interview folks. And so what I want you to do, whether they asked you a STAR-based question or if you're just wanting to walk them through a specific situation, I want you to actually have a Post-it note up in the corner that says STAR so that you remember to do this. And it's situation, task, action, result. Anytime that you're being asked to talk about yourself or your experiences, I want you to first describe the situation. What's the setup that's been happening? What is the specific situation or the background to how this particularly came about? What's the task itself? What were you asked to complete? Give details, give metrics. All of those things are things that really drive home the particular expertise that you have. Then the action. What did you do as part of this solution? What was your role? Don't talk about, and guys, I'm all about teams. I'm all about working together. But this is a situation where you want to highlight your specific action. What did you do? What did you say? What did you accomplish that helped move this forward? And finally, what was the result? There is nothing that drives me more crazy than when I'm doing an interview and somebody tells this long story about the background and what they did, but they don't tell me about what the result was. Even if the result was we're still working on it or it's still in process, but give me, how do you know that was a successful situation where your skill set came and was actually able to really move that forward? In that, it's at the end of the day, they're asking for a situation, but they're looking for particular competencies that you showed as you were going through that experience during the interview. Okay, I've already said this before, but it warrants saying it again. Don't be afraid to pause and take a breath. Okay, awkward silences are okay. Think about when somebody asks you that star question. Go ahead and write out, STAR. Quickly write through that. Sit down and take notes. There's not a single interviewer that's going to go, I need you to hurry up. If they're probably not the company for you. Okay, if you want to make sure that you put together a coherent positive response, because most of the time they're really going to ask 3 or 4 of those star questions. Okay, so if you don't properly portray that, that's a great opportunity that you've just missed if you didn't take the moment to write that out. So take a time. If somebody asks you a complex question, write down your thoughts before you start talking. Know what to disclose. Now, this is something that I think is even more critical right now in the environment that we live in. Okay, we have people working from home. You might be working from home for health reasons. Okay, I have some folks in our lives that have some health issues, and because of that, I am choosing to work from home right now. Now, if I was in an interview, I'm not going to disclose that information. Okay, they're not going to ask you about health-based issues, or they shouldn't at least. And you don't need to disclose that. The other thing as well is, don't disclose your childcare situation. Right now, we are all doing something different with our kids, with our pets. All of that is just, everybody's doing something different. A business cannot ask you, hey, what are you doing for your kids right now? Are your kids at home with you? They can't ask that. Okay. The only thing that they can ask is, can you reasonably meet the requirements of the job? Okay. I can't tell you how many times that we were in interviews and we would not ask questions, but people would disclose things that they shouldn't disclose just in banter or, just talking through things. Everybody's trying to make it work right now. I think that's the best. I mean, if you had told me 6 months ago that I would be doing a live stream with my 11-year-old dog on my lap just to keep him quiet, I would be mortified. But we're all just trying to make it work right now. So be very mindful that companies cannot ask some of those questions about your home life, about your health, about your kids. But if you disclose them, that's fair game for them to consider that in your employment decision. So just be very mindful about if they happen to ask, and I know sometimes, interviewers don't mean to, and they ask some of those questions being just, kind and considerate. All you have to say is, I can meet the requirements of the job. Okay, that's really all you have to say. And just be very mindful of that because, again, we're all trying to make it work right now. And sometimes something that seems very innocent can be something that is considered in your employment decision. Also be yourself and smile. Okay. And as you guys haven't noticed, I'm pretty much always unapologetically myself. But just be comfortable doing that. I know for some of you, you might be in a situation where you've been unemployed since the spring. And so, you might be nervous in interviews. You might be, worried, as many of us are right now. And so just make sure that you be yourself and smile at the end of the day.
Hey, Jessica, let me stop you because
Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
question. I know that you also have a little bit of a psychology background. And so, as we were talking about preparing for the interview and during the interview, mentally, what are great ways to really get yourself prepared for what that experience is going to be like? To your point, many people are still working from home, and all of us are working via Zoom or WebEx or some sort of virtual platform at this point. How do you get to a good mental space so that you're ready and prepared and you feel confident in what's coming next?
Okay, great question, Regina. My recommendation is to have certain rituals. Now, this is going to sound really woo woo, and I'm somebody that's very based in psychology. I loved Amy Cuddy's book called Presence. And if you have not read that book, it is fantastic. It's geared towards women, but I'm going to be honest with you, even if you're a man, you're probably going to get a lot out of it. She is a psychologist that focuses on body language. Now, I know you're thinking body language. What does this have to do with interviewing? So, coming up with some rituals that you have to calm you down is really important. For me, I pour a cup of coffee when I'm getting ready to do something, or tea. I've learned that, if I have a couple big meetings over the day, I have to switch over to decaf tea at a certain point. But I pour coffee for myself. I sit down, so many minutes before and go through notes. I also, this is going to sound really funny, but it came from Amy's book. I literally sit at my desk, take a few deep breaths, and do the Superman pose. And if you don't know about the Superman pose, look it up. But there are some very important things with your body language, and doing some rituals helps calm your nerves, helps really set up that. And so what I would tell you is start doing some of those calming rituals. It's going to be different for everybody, but start doing some of those rituals that will help you get into that mindset. And again, it's trial and error. What I've done, and I used to work from a co-working space. So working at home has been totally different for me. And I'm very lucky. My child is not here right now. I was doing a lot of stuff at the beginning of this with literally my child sitting on an iPad, sitting across from me. And so my rituals have been very different over the past 6 months. But having some sort of repeatable process that gets your body into the mode of performance is very important. And again, I can't recommend it enough. If you can read Amy Cuddy's book, it's fantastic. Virginia, any other questions right now?
Not this very second.
All right. So I want to empower you guys with one last thing. At the very beginning, I talked about an interview being two-way. And it is the kiss of death to go into an interview. And when the interviewer says, "Do you have any questions for us?" and you say no. Now, there have still been times that folks that have said no that have gotten the job. I don't want you to think that will just absolutely kill your chances. But if you want to be set apart from a candidate, bring in some great questions. And don't just have one or two, have 4 or 5. Because inevitably, if they're going to ask if you have any questions at the end, they may have covered some of your questions at the beginning through their normal spiel. So literally have 4 or 5 questions that you can ask them. Because again, the interview is 2 ways. I want you to think about writing questions around their company culture, their location or team practices. Even if you are interviewing for a job that's completely virtual, you can ask questions like, how do you guys, collaborate together as a team right now? Asking about the long-term vision for the role. I can go ahead and tell you guys my cheat. This is the question that I ask in any interview that I'm in. I ask, where do you envision this role in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, if it is successful? That will give you a good idea, not even for yourself. I mean, you may not still even be in that role in 5 years, but that will give you a good mark of success. And then I would ask as well, and this is something that sometimes throws off folks, but I always ask it, how do you guys define and measure success as an organization? Especially in something that is like HR and is very, there aren't always hard metrics with HR. And so I always ask the question, okay, how do you guys define success? How do you guys measure success as a department? And so that'll give you an idea, quite honestly, if you have a company that comes back and says, well, we don't really know how we measure success. You got some deeper issues going on there. And you have to be informed of, whether you want to jump into that fire or not. So having some of those good questions ahead of time are very helpful. I saw we just had do we have a question coming across, Regina?
Yes, ma'am, I sure do. So, in speaking with your point earlier about what to disclose and what not to disclose in an interview, if you have a large employment gap, and it might be specifically for childcare or for a personal reason, is that something that you should disclose to a potential employer? How would you handle that?
Okay. So most of the time, if you have a big employment gap, they're going to ask. So just be ready for that, first of all. I would say that when I first started in human resources, I technically have 11 years of experience, but I've really been around human resources for about 14 years. When I first started, that was the thing that people dreaded most. Like, oh my goodness, how are you going to explain gaps of employment? That was something that was a lot of hand wringing over. I would tell you guys, number one, that employers are more understanding than ever about gaps of employment. I have a background in organizational psychology, and there's a lot of research out there about gaps of employment and actually the positive effect on employees from taking a career break. And so, there's more recognition that life happens and people take career breaks. So here's all I would say going ahead of time that I would recommend that you have some talking points. Okay. Was there something that you were able to work on in that gap of experience? Was there something that you built your skills on? Because at the end of the day, there's an increased realization in the market that, in fact, gaps of employment are not the end of your career, but gaps of employment are an opportunity to work on a different skill set. Okay. I'll just be fully honest and transparent with y'all. The last 4 years, my career has looked very different. I have been a self-employed so that I could scale back to a part-time role and be at home with my son part-time. And that's something that I intentionally made the choice to do. And I can tell you, as somebody that runs a consulting business, but also somebody that works in the home, I've built some skill sets being at home as well. Definitely organization, delegation, all of those are things that I've gotten much better at, not just because I'm a consultant, but because I'm a mom. And so thinking about how can you spin some of those skill sets? How can you really focus on building your skill sets through those gaps? Thanks for that question, Martha. Or Maria. Maria.
Walter.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm
Yeah,
going to go ahead
thanks,
and
Walter.
stop
That was
sharing
great.
my screen.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
We do. I know we're running close on time, but a couple other questions. So at the beginning of your presentation, you talked a little bit about fit and what is a good fit? What does that mean? So the question is, how do you know if an organization really is a best fit for you?
Oh. Regina, I can't hear you.
I know.
Can you hear me? I heard the question, how can you know an organization is the best fit for you? And that was it. Is there?
That's really the scope of the question. How do you know if it's the best fit for you?
Awesome. Good stuff. So I would say you have to do that self work. You have to know, where do you fit best? And again, that's some trial and error. There's some really cool tools. I actually use a tool within my business called Match Fit. It is actually more focused on the employer side. So I actually have a tool that we can use for employers that actually is a culture assessment for folks coming in. It looks at things like, how competitive do you like your environment to be? How flexible do you like your environment to be? All of those things are things that it takes into account. And so I would highly recommend that you think about the previous environments that you've worked in and think about what aspects of those environments help you flourish and what aspects really make you struggle. There is no perfect company. If you find the perfect company, please give me a call, because I've been in this world for quite a while and I still haven't seen it. Even those companies that everybody wants to work for has problems. You're never going to get to the perfect company. But when you find a company that your culture fits the way that you work best, that's really a company that you've got to go with. And so you've got to know how you really perform best, in your work from day to day. Good question.
That's awesome. So I hope that each of you have really found some really cool, helpful hints from Jessica today about interviewing success. My personal notes here say that preparing your space, I think that is one of the greatest tips, especially in our virtual age right now, making sure that you've got everything laid out so that you can present your best space, your best self. Asking about technology requirements beforehand, just so that everyone feels prepared. Using YouTube if you need any help in wiggling some of those quirks out. And knowing what to disclose and what not to disclose. And my favorite tip, you mentioned Amy Cuddy's book on presence. It is a phenomenal read, and I recommend it to everyone. So I will say thank you again to Jessica for coming on and doing this for us today. Thank you to WGU for hosting us as a platform, and for the American Job Center as our partner, and getting the word out to folks as we help you get back and ready to work. As a little shameless plug, we have a whole host of employer showcases coming up the entire month of September. So please visit us at rutherfordworks.com to learn more and register for those. We have so many employers that are ready to hire you and ready to make you a part of their team. And now we feel like you all have a lot of great tips and tools for success to make that happen. So thank you again, Jessica. Everyone have a wonderful day.